Yeah, we're live. 7:10. Missed it by that much. If you hopefully you guys can see that. If not, you need to go back and look at it. But if you take a look and see the thumbnail is a 482-inch built by Robert Pond 482-inch FE stroker, 427 side or 428 motor, whatever your whatever your fancy is, but it's a stroker version, and it has a lot of cool things going for it, or it did back when he did this. First of all, it was an FE, which right away just always cool, for at least for me, because I don't ever get to run those. So it was cool that he was doing that, and I get to help him do some intake swaps and stuff. It was an FE right off the bat. It was also a stroker FE, so it was a 482 cubic inches. So it was not just an FE; it was a bigger FE. It was also all aluminum, so aluminum block and aluminum heads. It also, as you see from the photo, you can take a look if you need to go back out and take a look at the photo, and hopefully it's not upside down, because a lot of times it is. I might have to change that at the end. So if it is upside down, then that's just my salute for the boys down in Australia and New Zealand, for the boys down under. But it has stack injection on it. So it has back in the day, Shelby used the stack. They didn't use stack injection, fuel injection. They used a Weber manifold basically, and tore downdraft Webers on it. And this is like that, except that you can run Webers on the manifold because the manifold is the same. Or in this case, we ran fuel injection on it. And the fuel injection is cool because it looked like an awful lot like Webers, and it had the injectors housed inside where the emulsion tubes and that stuff is for the carburetor. So they're kind of hidden out of the way. It takes a little bit to get all that stuff in there and configured and stuff. But once you do, it works fairly well, and allows for, cool, like stealthy packaging. And then you can run the wires out, kind of down low, and they're not really seen. It's not this big, massive wiring harness and stuff. So it's a much cleaner deal, but it has that cool look. Because the reason that I posted this one is because we were talking about stack injection last night, and it is seriously cool. And this is a really good example of it also made a very, power output statement, but it makes a very strong visual statement. So and we were talking about this last night, and before this, that when you pop the hood, you want people to say, "Wow, that's really cool." And there are a number of ways to do that. One is to have something that's different than what they expected. If you have a Nova and it says 307, they pop the hood and it's not a 307 because it's a 507 or a 207 or something that's other than what they expect. That's really cool. And the stack injection is the same way. So even whether you have a small block or a big block, or in this case a big block Ford, even an FE Ford, because they make that sort of stack that Weber manifold for a lot of different applications. And then the carburetors or the fuel injection units are the same. The fuel injection throttle bodies are the same. They just bolt on to whatever manifold. So those just go on a small block Ford, a 351. They have them for 460, 429s. Like I said, small block Chevys, big block Chevys. There are a bunch of different applications, and those same ones just go on all of them. So it works very well. And the other thing is you can obviously fit, because they're fuel injected, you could fit, whatever size injector you want to put in there. You can change the injector size and tailor that to the power output, because the bore sizes on those throttle bodies, I want to say that they were 48, 50, 52, something like that. I have to go look that up and see exactly what size the bores were. But I know that it easily supported way over 600 horsepower on them. So it was not, they usually flowed more than the intake manifold did, unless you ported the intake manifold, and as much as a lot of the cylinder heads did. So they weren't restricting the combination much. And then the other thing that we did when I was running those is I would make, obviously different stack lengths to try to change the power curve, which also that's always cool. But looking at that motor again, FE, an aluminum stroker, and with stack injection. And the cool thing about the FE in particular is on some of these applications, the Webers or something like this, the intake manifold is basically, or the throttle body injectors or the carburetors mount so that the pad is basically parallel to the ground. These are offset, so they got some gangster lean to them, got some side cant, and that's really cool. It just makes them look a little bit different, and in my opinion, a little bit more aggressive and a little bit cooler. I remember having somebody mention to me when we were running these things on the dyno that he didn't like the angle because then one of them could starve airflow from the other one. I'm like, yeah, that's not really a thing. That's not really happening. And this was, I think that this particular one that we were testing, if I remember, was going in somebody's ERA or contemporary or other kind of kit Cobra. And so having a big block kit Cobra already is kind of cool. And you've got a car that weighs 20 something 100 pounds, and then you have a motor that thing was, I think that thing made over 600, and having that kind of power, and not just that, but like having the peak power is cool, but also having 480-inch motor with that kind of combination makes really good torque too. So having lots and lots of torque with a manual trans in a really lightweight car, it's just enjoyable because it when you ask it to or when you tell it to, it really gets up and goes. And so in looking at this, there's another story behind all this. All of that stuff is cool. And the problem that I have, and the reason that I put this up there, and the reason why I discuss this tonight, is that it's one of the things that I want to do a video on. Like I want to do a video on what happened because I did a story for this way back when we did it. But now, because of things that have happened with my computers and hard drives and stuff, I don't have access to those photos anymore. That's the only photo that I have of that installation and dyno test and sequence and stuff. And then that's all stuff that I use when I do a lot of these videos, because I'll be thinking, I'll just get inspiration one day and it will be like, oh, you need to do a video on an FE. Yeah, I do. That would be really good. Or I'll see one, at a store or driving around, or go on the internet and take a look at something and go, I have to do, there's got to be FE stuff. I need to do some FE stuff. And then I'll go try to find that. I'll remember, yeah, we did that one with Pond. It was really cool. And so I would want to do a video on that. And it's frustrating for me to know that I have done, and unfortunately there's a great many of those that I no longer have all of either the photos or the data, the information on, and those won't, unless some sort of miracle happens, those won't become videos. And it's disappointing because that's, people want to see that. The FE guys want to see that, and that would be cool. I obviously have plans to run other FE testing myself on the dyno, and we'll definitely do that. But it won't be that. I'm not going to put together a Robert Pond all aluminum 482-inch stroker with Shelby heads and a block and downdrafts on it, because that's a little cost prohibitive, obviously. So it would have been good. It would have been cool, and I think that people would have liked it. But like I said, there's lots of other stuff that go along with that are in that category of stuff that I want to do, and I want to do the right kind of video, even though we're looking back at stuff that happened earlier. I want to do that stuff because it was cool and the stories were cool and the videos would be equally cool. It's just for a lot of these things, I don't have all the stuff that I need to do it, which means obviously that I just need to go and do more testing and do more stuff and do more new stuff, which I am. I'm going to be heading down and doing that, and that will cure a lot of this stuff, but it will never bring those ones that are missing now. It'll never bring that stuff back. And I'm sure that other guys have that issue too, because if we look back through I know I tried to get access to a lot of the archive photos of, for Hot Rod and those guys. And because there's lots of cool stuff that they have original photography from Chevrolet or from Pontiac or, Lincoln or whoever that would make for great video. And that stuff, I didn't work for them. I did freelance stuff for them, but I wish that it's something that I had access to, because there would, like I said, there would be a lot of cool videos, and having access to that would allow us to bring a lot of that stuff, into video form. And I think people would be digging that. So I'm getting ready to go to West Tech. I'm going to be bringing a Pontiac down there and running it, hopefully, and doing some other things while I'm down there. I'm going to try to run some max speeding twin turbos on the LS. And if I can, I'd kind of like to also do some other tuning and testing videos on, if I can rig it up. We'll have to see if I can do the fuel cooling, which is something that I would like to do. I try to, when I'm deciding what things I need to get done, a lot of it is logistics, because if I have a motor up there already, it makes more sense to keep doing stuff on that motor. It doesn't make as much sense to do that one test and then take that off and then reconfigure it for a completely different motor, because all of that is at least a day, and it just takes time to make all that happen, and then you get less done. If you have a motor that's already up there and you can run it naturally aspirated and run a turbo with it, try different throttle bodies, try different fuel temperatures or whatever, and then you can get a lot more data done. But we also have to run different things, which I obviously plan on doing. I need to revisit the 8.1 and do a couple of cams on that. What else do I have down there? The Cadillac needs to go back together. I need to get the Atlas back together. The 2.2 there's just no end to the stuff that needs to get done. I also might have access to a 390 FE. That won't go down this time, but it will go down sometime, and that would be good. An FE versus a Hemi. I was even looking at, because I don't know if it's the same person that keeps mentioning the 4.7 liter HO Dodge motor, the one that predated the Hemi. I also have Mark Sanchez, my buddy, took out his North Star motor, so we have that. There's no end in stuff that that can be tested. So let's see what you guys got going on. Got some eye candy going on. 1049, what's up? The 1 liter Mafia is in the house. Keyboard Warriors. We got a 6-pack for the FE from my 390 off a 62 Thunderbird. Oh, that would be very cool to run. My brother has 5 Galaxies, 265s, 166, 167, 168. I believe he has rebuilt 428 Q code engines in all of them. Wow. Oh, Oliver, you were the one mentioning the 4.7. Yeah, for the first time, I just went and looked up some specs and stuff on them. And the Magnum also needs to go back and get done. Alan just came over from Uncle Tony's. Jason, just out of curiosity, what is a 6-pack FE intake? Is it an iron 6-pack? Or is it an aluminum one? And what does it weigh? If it's an iron one, it's going to be a lot. Yeah, I remember trying to lift those things up. And any sort of iron FE manifold is not a joy. Oh, it is aluminum. Okay, that'd be better. Was that a factory one that was aluminum, or did somebody else make that? Because, man, it would be worth just putting an aluminum intake manifold on an FE just to get some of the weight off of it. Jason, did that use the Holley carburetors on that thing? I can't remember. I think it did. I think that they were like the ones that used on the tri-power Corvette, and maybe like the ones on the Dodge. 62, yes, on the Holley. Okay. Yeah, iron ones are ridiculous. I know my son was helping me move a bunch of the Pontiac heads into storage. We were carrying them in. These are terrible, especially the ones that also had the cast iron exhaust manifolds on them. He's just like, these are awful. I said, yeah. I said, he said, and he's not a car guy like I am, but he said these should only be made out of aluminum. I said, yes, I agree 100%. I have 363.5 Galaxies, one with a dual quad factory 427 low rise. Nice. And a 390 bottom end. Very cool. 63.5. So the Hollies, is it one 500 in the center, and then are the outer ones like 350s or 390s or something? I'm just going back by memory on that stuff. Excuse me, the Galaxies are really cool. When I was back at, I think it was either Elkhart or it was Watkins Glen. I want to say it was Watkins Glen. I met a guy that was racing. His kid was racing a Mustang with us, and he was a Ford guy, and he had a bunch of stuff. He had Galaxies, and he had a Thunderbolt, and he had a Cobra, and so we got to ride in a bunch of those, and it's like seriously cool. Is a Cobra Jet valve size too big for that 390 bore? It's a factory intake for a 62 Sport Roadster M T-Bird. Wow. What year are the Pontiac heads that are known to flow over 300 from the factory? That's got to be the Ram Air 5 heads or something. They're almost like a tunnel port. Nothing else flowed anywhere near that. And it wouldn't have been, I don't think any of the production heads flowed anywhere near that. Even for the big block 455, Pontiac guys just. Yeah, we were talking about somebody mentioned the stuff about big blocks. We were talking about that last night too, that an FE is another example. I wouldn't consider a 390 FE a big block. But a 428 and a 427, I would. They made GT and Cobra Jet heads in 390s and 428s. I know that the GT heads, but is the valve size different on a GT head than it is on a 428? Would you rather have a modified 390 for a daily driver or a genuine 428 Super Cobra Jet? Well, I'd want to be able to tell people. We were talking about this last night. I want to be able to tell people that I have the Super Cobra Jet, obviously. But it's not. And honestly, how much daily driving you're really going to do on a Cobra Jet or Super Cobra Jet powered car, or combination, you're not going to like drive it back to New York you're not going to go from coast to coast in it. You're going to drive it to Cars and Coffee and do burnouts in it and stuff. And so the bigger motor would be more fun. Richard, I have a Gen 1 Lightning, roller block 351, smog port GT40 heads, intake, a daily cam to change push rods. The push rod thing you're going to have to check. We don't normally have to. A lot of times we put hardened push rods in it, and that's more for the valve spring chains that you're going to have to change. You're definitely going to have to change valve springs. Valves you're not going to have to change. The camshaft that you put in would be the Extreme Energy 274 or one step smaller than that. The 351 actually works pretty well with that camshaft. For a big block Chevelle 455 versus GTO 455, like a GTO Judge or something. The 390 in Ford trucks was an FE also. But they also had 360s and 352s. Can you do a fuel efficiency test on a small block Ford? I can't really do that on the engine dyno. Like a triple flow top end 331 and see how long it lasts, how long it takes to burn a half a gallon, like at wide open throttle or something. We don't have to do it that way. If you want to know what it does at wide open throttle, we can tell you what the brake specific number is especially if it's carbureted. I've always thought of the 383 Mopar as a big block, but technically it might not be. Well, Alan, the specific Chevrolet made 455s or 454s with a number of different power outputs, so they made them in different configurations. They also made 455s in different configurations. So you'd want to, what people would want to see is the LS6 1970 Chevelle versus a stage 1 455, which was, I don't know if it was in a GTO, but it was in the Regal GS, and those would be the ones to do the shootout with. Brake specific fuel consumption number would be good. That way I can ballpark my fuel mileage during a race. But your fuel mileage is not going to be a function of that brake number because that's a steady state thing. I like to shoot for a 0.42 brake specific number. A 0.42 at wide open throttle on a small block Ford. Uh-oh, somebody wedged their McLaren under a guardrail in Portland. That's not good. Devin, weird question. I remember reading years ago about a fuel-injected 351 Windsor long rod build. Is it worth building a long rod versus a stock rod if using boost? That's all just nonsense. You won't see any difference. You'll see a lot of difference from changing the boost a pound. A lot more than you would ever see from any kind of rod change. 73 Super Duty 455 is good, but that motor is not going to be anywhere near what an LS6 454 is going to put out. Does a 428 make more power than a 429 big block? Are you talking about Super Cobra Jet guys? I think the 429 was rated more. The 440 would be another one. 428 versus 427. Mopar had 350 and 361 big blocks. They did. I know that they had 360s. At least I thought it was a 360. I'm not familiar with the 350. 361 and 390 FE. Yeah, an LS6 Chevelle is a serious piece. an L88 427 versus an L6. I think that the L88 has more camshaft in it. But it would be interesting. I tried to find the excuse me. I tried to find the information and parts to do a reproduction of an L88 because the owner of Westech has some new old stock, basically brand new L88 heads in a box still. And I was going to try to talk him into let me use them. I don't think he would. But it just got me thinking that I wanted to put one together to see what they really made. I mean, I've heard numbers from, oh yeah, it was rated at 430 or whatever, and it made 550 or 560 or whatever. And I just don't know. I'd want to see what it does in comparison to things that we run, the way that we run them, just to put it into perspective. And the ideal thing, like with all these big blocks, like with the LS6 that I'm hoping to run, and the L78, is that run it with some kind of stock exhaust manifold and then run it with headers and see what difference that makes. Because back in the day, if you had something like that, that would have certainly been one of the upgrades that you would do. And on a big block, it seems to be more necessary than some of these other applications. We need to test my buddy's LS7 454. So is it an LS7 like one of the old crate motors or something? $180 header, that would be good. It's hard to configure on the dyno though. Small block forward brake specific with 411. We see stuff in the 4s and even down in the 3s sometimes, but not with a typical small block build. I have seen Brian Wolf's Godzilla. 496 stroker versus an 8.1. What is the poll for tonight? What do you prefer, dig racing or roll? Please says open headers with boost like an old airplane. How are we going to run a turbo? Are you talking about supercharger then? Scott, all of those deck heights are right for the Fords. The only thing that's a little bit different is the earlier 351s had a 948. But again, you know, you could machine that much off. They didn't come as a crate motor. They came as Chevrolet offered LS7 short blocks. Yeah, the LS7 was a crate motor, and it was not ever a production motor. It was never offered anything. No, the LS7 was not. The LS6 is the only one that they put in production vehicles. .413 Max Wedge. I've only ever seen one of those. Yeah, if you change the deck height, the pistons will self-clearance. It'll just smash the mash the dome down. Well, the LS7 was a different motor. It had a bigger camshaft. It had higher compression. It probably had different cylinder heads too. Racer D, did you ever find out what the crank and cam trigger were on the Iron Duke? Yeah, 427 FEs are not easy to find anymore. Would you have seen those in wrecking yards a lot, even way back? I think if I look in my Chevrolet performance catalog that I know that I have, let's see here. I know I have an old one. Complete engine guides. Porsche stuff. I don't want that. Maybe over here. Rose Esprit. Jacques Cousteau. Awesome stuff. National. Take a look. Let's see. Police cars. Book of engines. Oh, here we go. This is it. Chevrolet Power, 5th edition. So what year was this? Let's see. 84. OG. Corvette chassis. 438. Service parts. Look, twin cam off road. Cosworth. Vega. I'm hoping that they have. I thought that they had complete engines for sale. This is kind of how to prepare them. Small block, large block. Service parts. Chevrolet offers a partial 427 RPO L88 engine, complete with crank rods, a 454 cubic inch heavy duty 3/4, complete with open. No, it's not telling me that. I know that I have something that talks about the LS6 and LS7 stuff. Z01. Not that one. Let's see my complete book of engines. Let's see this one. Look, complete book of engines. This one also, Cosworth Vega, very popular. Small 8. Let's see if they have something here. Chevy Big V8. Let's see. 4. Well, I'm not seeing it. I'll have to take a look, and I'll find that later on so we can talk about that stuff. Dodge Slant 6. Cool. Cosworth Vega. Never heard of a 410 mil. I've heard of 430s, yeah. 410 was a 390 bore and a 428 stroke. I heard of a 410 and a 406 FE. I have that book. It has a Datsun Z in it. This one does. Peterson's Complete Book of Engines. Let's see what we got here. Volkswagen, Pontiac, Olds, Ford, Dodge, Chevy, American Motors, Buick. Let's see if this is the one you're talking about. I don't see anything on. There's no import stuff in here. How to give your engine a second wind. Oh, that's even an FE build there. I recognize it. Let's see what they're building. All the major components are showing a Chevy there. Prepping cylinder heads. How to take your 440 Mopar to 511 inches for $750. Oh, it does have a Datsun in here. You're right. Why didn't it say that? Why didn't the thing say that? Super strong. High performance parts. What is this thing? This is on page 168. The Mighty Upstart. Oh, cool! It is it's an SCCA IMSA road racing build. 2.8 liter and 3 liter Porsche Carreras. 13 or 11.3 to 1, 300 horsepower. Nice. Man, it's been a long time since I looked at this. See, there's our side drafts again. All sorts of fancy stuff. Good call. The future watching a guy read a book. I wasn't reading. I was just looking at the pictures. I can't read. 2.5-inch exhaust or 3-inch exhaust for my Riviera GS. A 2.5 is usually big enough for most things. Even on a 600 horsepower motor, I don't think it was worth more than 10 or 15. Devin, any chance of you getting a 289 or 302? I have one of those and building the bundle of snakes with the exhaust in the center for the diner room. That's going to take a specific kind of cylinder head, right? I don't have that cylinder head. This isn't the first night with no pole. We've not had poles before, but we can have one. Okay, does the most powerful stock 390 FE, in keeping with our FE for tonight, does the most powerful stock 390 FE make more power than the most powerful stock 400 Pontiac? There's your poll. Boom. That just happened. Somebody mentioned a Toyota Cressida. My parents had one of those for a long time. That's actually a pretty good motor. Books are better than reading than on a computer screen. I agree. Yeah, we're never going to get 100% on the poll. Is there a forced induction ITB intake for a Gen 2 small block? Like for an LT1? First of all, why do you want an ITB intake and forced induction? Because then it's not going to be an IR manifold. It's going to be a common plenum manifold. The fact that you have a bunch of throttle blades is not really going to do anything for you. The Cressida at the time was kind of the Toyota like high water mark. You don't need to store the internet on paper, except that nobody can come and take this. All of the stuff on the internet is temporary. There was no such thing as a Ram Air 5, not in a production car, not that I know of. I don't know how long they continued that Cressida, but the one I'm talking about probably would have been like a 3ME or something like that. It wasn't a 2J yet. I have a crank-driven turbocharger that you want to use for Rocky Mountain Race Week. That's good. I believe there's an 8 turbo arrangement in Quirky Bell's book. I'll take a look at that. I don't remember seeing an 8 turbo deal. I mean, obviously people have done it, but I don't remember seeing that in Quirky's book. I have Quirky's Maximum Boost here. If you guys want me to read that to you. I did. I'm going to have to arrange all of those for in turbo and Pontiac and. I don't know. Did they make the Cadillac? The question is, why are 472 500 Cadillac exhaust manifolds so tricky to weld? Did they make them out of a different kind of? Do they have a different nickel content or something on the exhaust? So we're almost split here. We've got 56% saying yes, that the 390, the most powerful one, would make more power than the most powerful 400 Pontiac. 7 GTE. Okay. Twin turbo Cobra, replica, and maximum boost. You are correct. That Ford with the exhaust on the center was a 4-cam. The one with the exhaust on the center, if you've seen the old pictures of it, was a prototype that they did for it was either for an Indy car or a Le Mans car or something. Richard, I'm building a 6-liter to go in my truck. AFR heads, 1 step up from stock on the cam, flat top pistons, floater rods. No tuning will get the max from the setup. How do I meet smog? I have no idea. It sounds like you've already put stuff on there that's not smog legal. 60 to 61 hypo 390 was rated at 401. Oh, really? The 390 was rated at more than 1 horsepower per cubic inch? That's pretty good. That would be an interesting thing to take a look at. People are mentioning the cylinder head flow in the 390 FE versus the Pontiac in Ram Air 2 or 3 or whatever guys they had that thing in. I wonder what the difference in the head flow is between those stock heads. Andrew's here from Gold Coast. What's up? Yeah, I don't know if the if there's something particular about that cast one. I mean, the cast iron exhaust manifolds are not ideal to weld anyway. Like the LS stuff is a cast steel, I think, which is different. So I'm not a I've done a little bit of welding, but I'm not a welding expert. I'm not even a welding amateur or a novice. But I think that those are different. And so I know when guys were doing back in the day when they're talking about doing, because that's one of the things that often got brought up when doing turbo stuff is that you'd weld a flange on there, and everyone's complaining about having to weld the stock cast iron exhaust manifolds, capping them, and then welding a turbo mount onto them. And I know that those guys had to talk about heating them up and use some particular kind of rod. Some FE heads are better than others. I would imagine that a 427 side or like a medium riser or a high riser probably flows better than the 390 stuff, right? Better to braze cast iron. Thunderbolt, the 427 FE cranks had a $ cast into the crank. Wonder why Ford did that. Because they knew that later on they're going to be hard to come by and they were going to cost a lot of money. Just a slant 6 exhaust manifold and welded a T3 flange on it. Took a lot of pre and post heat with the night rod. Yep. Richard, how close are the listed flow numbers versus the actual flow numbers on AFR heads? Do you know if they are close? Yeah, it would depend a lot on which flow bench that you tested in your procedure for flow testing and what bore size you use and all that stuff. If AFR tells you they flow that much, they do. They're usually, if anything, conservative about the stuff so that they make sure that every one of them that they have flows at least that much. Richard, the Chevy PowerBook says milled the 1970 LT1 intake divider down 3/4 of an inch for more top end. That's what they did with the RPM air gap. I want to do this to an old school 302 Performer RPM for my boat build. That's fine, or you can get a Performer RPM air gap that already has that done, or put a 1/2 inch spacer, but all of that does kind of the same thing. Yeah, the poly might be the wide block that the guy was asking about. A Pontiac 389 and 400 have a different outward appearance. I think all of their differences are internal, right? Does a 389 have a different head on it or something? I know if you have a tri-power 389, you're not going to have that as a 400, but the intake will actually bolt on if I'm remembering correctly. Someone was asking if Motor Trend has ever approached me for my own show. No, they have not. The FE truck engines had a cast iron 2.4 bolted to the engine for exhaust manifold. A ram air. I don't know what LV is. Is it a ram air 5 or 4? Pontiac will eat a 390 Ford and will even run with an LS6 Chevelle. You don't. Whenever somebody mentions, I don't know what the case is with a 400 that's properly prepared. I'm talking about stock for stock, but on the 400s, whenever people talk about the quickest muscle cars of that era, LS6 Chevelle is one of them. The Buick Regal GS and the Hemi are all the ones that people talk about. I don't ever hear anybody ever talk about a 400 Pontiac. Looks like Edelbrock only goes half that distance. The distance down that you cut it, I don't think is going to be dramatic. I mean, it's not going to affect it dramatically. Once you get a common signal, then you'll start changing that signal. Scott's out. I'll see you, man. The highest factory power rating for Pontiac is 365. Ford 390 is 401. Motor Trend needs to get your show. That would be good. I thought maybe that they would be talking to me about the Hot Rod Garage deal, but having her on there is a much better for them financially, I'm sure. And she's really good, so. I could bring the tuning specs from Ford to a race prep of 429. Nice. What gear ratio would you use for a 402? I don't know what the rest of your trans is. What transmission do you have in it? Like it tells you which jets to use and springs and stuff. Yeah, if you've got guys that have run it a few times and tried these things, it's fairly easy to get that dialed in. And if you're running the same thing and you're running the same carburetor, giving that information, hey, we ran 78s and 82s, and we ran these power valves in it, and we're building up a little street rod stroker out of a 360 FE right now for one of our customers. I know Mark Tenchez has a 352, and he's been told not really to do much with that. To get a 390, obviously, is a better choice. Hey, Admiral, ordering parts. That still counts as part of the build, right? So where are we on our, man, it's split. Does the most powerful stock 390 FE make more power than the most powerful stock 400 Pontiac? 52% saying yes and 48% saying no, with 81 votes, and we've got more than 100 people here. I'd like to see a video of a VK56 Nissan. That would be good. The nice thing, one of the people pointed out, Buick 455 is a sleeper. They can rev. Most people don't rev them, and the nice thing about those is you don't have to make hay. These things run really well, even running at 6,000 or less. Just saw a video of a 4300 with LS heads on it. Yeah, if you keep going down that rabbit hole, you'll find that there are some that have Boss heads on them and stuff. '74 Super Duty Trans Ams, especially if they have the right camshaft in them. My screen says there are only 26 likes. There's more than that, Terry. So, Racer, you think that your 364 truck gains 75 foot-pounds by going to headers? That'd be a lot. Wasn't the 4.7 overhead cam actually a Mercedes deal? Richard, I need advice on where to go stroke picker for a 360 block to take it over 400 inches. What kind of 360 are we talking about? Is it a FE? Is it a Dodge? What is it? Have you run a 4-pattern cam yet? Yes, the guys from West Tech have. I didn't do it. The 429 Ford was the quickest muscle car. Nobody ever mentions that one. I think Ford had some FE factory stock specials that were exceptional or rated higher than any of the Pontiac 400s. Richard, are you accepting engine donations? What kind of engine do you have to donate? I thought people didn't want to rev. Somebody made a comment that you weren't getting an Olds or Pontiac 455 to rev like a Buick 455. They go to 6,500, no problem. I thought that those were supposed to have some kind of oiling problem or something, and that they didn't rev. I don't remember anybody talking about revving them that high. Certainly not stock ones. I thought that there was 2 Ram Air 5 Trans Ams in '69. That they actually put that somehow Ram Air 5 motors found their way into Trans Ams in '69. I didn't think that they listed them as putting them in any of the production cars. But I'm far from a Pontiac historian. What cam to recommend for a 2.3? I recommend Boost. Perry, the 427 FE with a 428 crank. That's really common back in the day, making them 454s. Two more minutes. Someone needs to make friends with someone who crushes cars. That would be good. Tim, you can vote twice. I think you just got to log out and then log back in. Oh, I'm going to write down a poll for tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to get going. What pistons do you recommend to use with an AFR 460 heads for valve clearance? You have to use a piston that's specific for that head on that 460. I think JE makes some for that. So for tomorrow, and we're going to turn our poll off at 52% saying yes and 48% saying no, that the 390 makes more power than the 400. Tomorrow, our poll is going to be, should I run twin turbos on inline six-cylinder engines like the Atlas, like the L28, like the Slant 6, like the 292, like the, what other inline motor do I have? The Barrett is another one. And not because it, and this will be our discussion for tomorrow night, but not because it's necessary. I mean, it's not necessary, but it just looks cool to have two of them. So that will be the poll for tomorrow night. So I will see you guys all tomorrow. Thank you everybody for showing up, and hopefully should have more testing coming up. Unfortunately for me, the editing software that I use, they just changed it and greatly limited what I have available to me. So I'm gonna have to relearn another software, and I'm doing that right now to try to get testing that I already have done and get it up in video form. So thank you guys all for your patience, and thank you guys for showing up. I will see you all tomorrow.